Welcome everyone to today's live session titled Your Questions Answered, CAR T-Cell Therapy in Lupus with Chris Learn, Senior Vice President at the Cell and Gene Therapy Center of Excellence at Parexel, and Dr. Michael Saddekni, the Medical Director of Rheumatology at Parexel. And in this session today, we're going to be discussing the groundbreaking potential of CAR T therapy in lupus treatment, and we'll be answering key questions from the lupus community with these two leading experts from Parexel. So with that, I'll let you both jump right in and get us started.
Great, thanks, Brianna. So it's an honor and a privilege for Michael and I to be here to speak with you today. Really an important time in drug development, and we're here to tell you about some exciting innovations in that space. I've been working in cell therapy for the past 2 decades. I was very fortunate to be part of some of the CAR T programs that went on to be approved by US FDA and other global regulatory agencies around the world for oncology indications. And I think it's an exciting time, particularly in cell and gene therapies, to understand how we can reset certain diseases where we just have not had a whole lot of success to date. So appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I'm going to turn it over to Michael so that he can introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Brianna. I'm really happy. I'm excited to be here. And actually, also, I'm right now in investigator meeting for lupus specifically. So I cannot express how much I'm excited for the all new upcoming treatment for the market and what's going on, especially in the lupus space right now. So very brief, I'm a rheumatologist with long-term experience with treating lupus patient, doing also another leading clinical trials or another indication in rheumatology, RA, etc. And also right now, I feel like we have hitting a milestone for the other treatment coming to the market for lupus treatment. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to turn it to Chris. So Chris, please, it's all yours.
Michael. Absolutely. So today's talk is really meant to be very transparent and to make sure that you get the information you need. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we know about lupus at this time, what the standard of care has been, and what some of those emerging treatments are, such as chimeric antigen receptor T cells or CAR T cells, and where lupus trials are being run and how you can get involved. And then if we have opportunities, certainly happy to have questions from you and discuss those as we're able to answer those. So again, thank you for your time today and for the honor to present here. So lupus, as many of you know, is a pretty nefarious disease, and it comes in a couple of different forms: systemic lupus erythematosus, cutaneous lupus, drug-induced lupus, and neonatal lupus. And these are very complex disease pathways. They involve a variety of different organs. They can affect a variety of different organs, and they do affect many people throughout the world. So you are not alone in this journey. The interactions between the T and B cells in the immune system, and specifically the autoantibody production that B cells make in terms of attacking host organs in lupus, is really the hallmark of the disease. And that's going to be our focal point for today. We're going to talk about how maybe to get rid of those B cells or downregulate them to some degree so that the severity of disease is not so much. Of course, renal involvement and other aspects such as cardiovascular are major causes of illness and death as it relates to lupus. So being able to rein the immune system in is really quite key. And that is what chimeric antigen receptor T cells, or CAR T cells, are really meant to do. What we know about lupus now is that we have tried very hard to work forward with conventional therapies, small molecules, certain types of biologics, different types of chemicals, but we haven't been able to greatly improve those survival rates or the frequency of end-stage renal disease in different forms of lupus. And that, again, has made a significant impact on the morbidity and the remission rates in these patients. And drug toxicity, when you have to use a lot of drug or various drugs for a prolonged time period, can lead to toxicity in the patient, disease flares, things that are pretty common with the immune system as it sort of ebbs and flows. You kind of turn the immune system off and then you rev it back up. And that can be very painful and difficult to manage for the patient. The primary objective is really to get to a point of disease control. And if you can do that in a well-tolerated setting where the patient feels good, is not experiencing these different types of toxicities, that's really going to be key. Up until now, the most recent approval was in 2021 when anifrolumab was brought to market. Multiple clinical trials and others, including small molecules, just have not been able to move that needle in terms of clinical benefit. So we really need to do better here for our patients. Not that we haven't been trying, but the outcomes have to be there. And that's, I think, really quite key for us. So recent research suggests that the potential cause of lupus lies in that imbalance of the immune system. And there are particular receptors and pathways that further dysregulate the immune system as it relates to environmental exposure. We don't understand that well enough. We have some ideas, but we can't really ascribe a true cause to it. We do think that certain pathways like the aryl hydrocarbon receptor pathway could have a disproportionate role in certain types of disease with lupus, but we have to understand that better. We do know it leads to abnormal immune cell behavior and disease progression, so that's a starting point. That gives us something to work forward from. Additionally, imbalances in T cell populations, which is not the primary culprit in lupus, rather it's the B cells with the autoantibodies, may also be a factor that is driving the disease. Why? Because T and B cells talk to one another in the immune system. That's really, really key. So until we develop better agents and ways of addressing that, it's going to be very hard for us to understand what's the best therapy. But we're getting there, and we're going to talk today about CAR T and how that may improve that. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Michael to take us through some of the current understandings of disease management.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So the problem with managing lupus is not like we're managing one disease, we're managing multiple diseases in one. So really, because lupus is systematic, it's affect all the organs in the body. So let's break it down to depends on severity. We have a mild patient for lupus, moderate and severe. And what do we mean by that? We meaning like how lupus is active. So the major pillar of lupus is to control it with anti-malaria. And the most common drug here in the United States is hydroxychloroquine. Some patients, they need some boost with prednisone, even though we all know the side effects of prednisone. So one of the goal treatment when we want the patient to hit that low disease activity to start weaning off prednisone. Also, when we're not able to do that, we introduce what we call prednisone sparing agents, like those other immunotherapies, like the thiobrines, methotrexate, MMF, etc. So the whole idea of managing lupus patients to reach that patient to where we say it's low disease activity, and we have like fancy score. This fancy score called SLEDAI-2K. It's not just for us to measure the activities. It's numeric score. So if it's less than 4, that patient may be in a low disease activity, especially if the prednisone is less than 7.5. But dreamily and our hope to have the remission, and that if the SLEDAI-2K is 0, with what we call, we have a score for physicians, we call PGA. If that score is less than 5, also that's mean the patient is, in the opinion of the treating physician, he reached the remission. And also if the prednisone less than 5%, 5 milligram per day. So the whole idea is to manage the symptoms, to manage the patient not flaring, and to reach that state of remission or low disease activity. Can you move to the next slide? All right, so we have a concept here in lupus treatment in general, what we call treat to target. What does that mean? If we look at the first graph, we see the clinical disease, it's jumping up and down, up and down. And the problem with that is the damage happening to each organ in the body. Again, because lupus is affecting all body, affect the skin, the kidney, the heart. So we're trying to prevent that damage by introducing the agents. That's treating as soon as possible. Treat to target mean, we saw it in lower graph, like we have the disease activity spike, and then we have the damage is so low. And that's actually our goal when we're seeing a lupus patient. And all of you, the European patient, you've been dealing with lupus. So what you're trying to prevent the damage happening later on in the diseases. And that's our goal. And that's what we're trying to do for each patient we see in our clinical practice. Next slide. All right. So as Chris said, the majority of treatment of lupus is based on two key factors in our immune system, the T cells and the B cells. So all the treatments right now in the market and the treatment coming to the market to try to suppress those T cells and B cells. By suppressing T cells, we're going to suppress the B cells. And the B cells is the key for secreting all those antibodies we measure when we diagnose lupus and when we measure them when we monitor the treatment. Here is a tons of new upcoming treatment to the market. I'm not going to go through the names, but Anifrolumab, which is the newest one been approved, it is targeting what we call interferon 1, which is also, this is a new mechanism of action for a couple of new targeted therapies in the market. We have Benlysta, which is directly hitting the B cells and depleting those B cells. And also this has been approved. And other also treatment coming like it listed here. It's monoclonal for small they are monoclonal targeting for small other targeted area like TYK2 inhibitors and other. But the majority of all this treatment coming is to hit the T cells and the B cells. Next one. All right, so Immunomodulator. I'm here actually right now in Atlanta attending one of the studies is just being published for UCB. They press released it on Friday. We're presenting today about what we call anti-CD40. So after long time, we didn't see any drug has been showing some efficacy in lupus. So interestingly, here today, we show the data and it's been presented and that show efficacy for patients with moderate to severe lupus. And that's very interesting. Also here, I'm gonna talk about deucravacitinib. I know all of their very weird names, but that's also shows some promising data. It's an oral medication. It's for something what we call TYK2, which is also this TYK2, if we go into the cascades that affect the interferon alpha, which was what I'm talking about, and it shows some efficacy especially in the skin and the joint symptoms for lupus. So as you see, there is a multiple treatment coming to the market. Hopefully we get more and the science is there. And we're very interested about this new milestone in lupus. Next. All right. So CAR-T, why we're so excited about CAR-T? CAR-T is the new emerging therapies. We all, when we heard about it the first time, we thought, okay, finally we're having something promising for all those patients. They're suffering lupus for a long time. So CAR-T initially, there was some data published in China, and then there's Dr. Joe Schett in Germany. He tested this treatment on around 15 to 20 patients, and we took this science actually from oncology, and he implanted the lupus patient. And interestingly, with a single infusion, the B cells which we're talking about, we call depleted. What depletion mean? Depletion mean like this B cells is not active anymore in the body, so it's not secreting. So the only problem with the CAR-T, it's still, there is no controlled study about it now compared to what we call standard of care or placebo. And there is a side effect for it because it's new. So the side effect could be hypersensitivity reaction. It could be more infection because it's basically killing all the regular immune cells in the body. But study showed, and basically on this 15-20 patient presented on multiple conferences, that those patients with single infusion, they will be able to reach remission. The symptoms is improving, and the B cells is again show very low activity, that's why we're so interested about it. There is a lot of company going after CAR-T. There is a lot of science. There is different type of CAR-T. Maybe we can go a little bit more in the next couple of slides to talk more about them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. And I think Michael framed it beautifully, which is there are many different elements to the disease pathway in lupus. And what we have to do is we have to narrow it down to that intent to treat target. That is really quite key because that's a better journey for the patient. It's a better journey for the clinical outcomes. And we think that CAR-T may be some of that. Now, the way CAR-T works is that historically, we will take white cells from a patient with lupus. We will engineer their T cells, and those T cells will get a receptor, an artificially placed receptor on the cells of a patient so that they will target B cells, and they will go in and kill the B cells in that patient. And that is a good thing in the sense that we're beginning to pull back on the B cells and the autoantibody production that really drives that pathogenesis in lupus. As you can see, there are several different types of clinical trials and sponsors out there developing a variety of CAR-Ts for lupus. And I think that's very exciting. You have Cartesian Therapeutics that's using mRNA platform. You have Novartis, which is a classical CAR-T. CRISPR is gene editing. It's a different type of CAR-T that looks to impart specificity and increased function. You have Cabaletta Bio and Kyverna Therapeutics, both industry leaders in setting CAR-T in place for the research community. And there are others, other entrants into this space. So we're very excited about it. Now, you may say, Chris, Michael, is there a downside to, aside from the safety profile, is there a downside to, taking out your B cells, killing those B cells? Well, yes, but there are ways for your physician to manage that, meaning you can get supplements of gamma globulin so that you get antibodies back if and as you need to make sure that you have coverage from things like colds and viruses and that nature. But the real thing is that in a lupus patient, those B cells are largely driving the pathogenesis through that autoantibody production, and CAR T cells give us a chance to maybe eliminate many of those cells. Now let's go into a little bit about the patient journey, because I think that's really important. And what Michael and I have wanted to do is to give you a landscape of where standard of care and some other emerging therapies are, as well as what it looks like to be a CAR T patient. This is not a painful process. It's very similar to a blood donation. A patient will go in to a cell harvesting clinic at a hospital or an bone marrow suite, and they'll just simply have a blood draw, and they'll put your red blood cells back, but they will take out the white cells, and specifically they're looking for those T cells. And what they do is they take your T cells, they grow them up in a lab, and they then put a gene therapy into that T cell to express a receptor that is specific for the B cells in your body. And then they grow these cells up to millions and millions, and then they infuse it back into the patient. And in doing so, it allows the T cells to go to work and to begin to eradicate those B cells. Now, it may not be the most elegant or perfect system, but it is far advanced to where many of our therapies have been to date. And we feel that as we learn more about CAR T, both in the cancer setting as well as in new settings such as lupus and others, we're going to get better at this. We think if the problem begins in the immune system, we should try to make it end in the immune system. And CAR T cells are a way to potentially do that. Now, some of the requirements for the patients who have lupus that would like to go on to an investigational study for CAR T have to meet all the protocol inclusion and exclusion criteria. And that's a big deal because there's a lot going on in that space, and maybe not every patient will be eligible. But sponsors really want to be able to treat as many of these patients in the investigational setting so that they know whether the therapy is worthwhile or not. It does require a commitment from the patient. It's a very different therapy because it's what we call a one and done. You have a lot of work by the patient and by the clinical team to get your cells ready up to the point of infusion. And then once you get that infusion, you really do not come back to clinic that much. It's not the same as other clinical trials. And you don't take other medications for a prolonged period of time. It's a single infusion, and then we wait to see how effective it is. Here's the good news, and we all need a little bit of good news these days. There have been several studies, to Michael's point, that have shown not only can we get durable remission or decreased production of autoantibodies in some patients treated with CAR T for lupus, but some of these patients are now several years out. That's very exciting. For an indication where we have really struggled to move the needle or to do better by our patients, this is the type of data that inspires us and helps us to hopefully accelerate some of these therapies as we go forward. Now, from a patient perspective, obviously there's a lot of upfront work to get the infusion, the apheresis and then the infusion and so on. But typically you have to be followed for about 15 years. And why is that? Well, because even though they're your cells, they're your T cells, there is a gene therapy in there that usually behaves itself 99 times out of 100 or even higher than that. But sometimes it doesn't. And if it causes issue, we have to be careful about your health and safety. So you may have to come back to clinic in the early stages every few months. And then as you get further out, it's every once a year. There are other risks, like Michael said, types of hypersensitivity, different types of immune reactions that can result. But again, those tend to be fewer. We do think that the benefits outweigh the risks, and from a clinical trial perspective, that is what regulators are trying to understand. Is this therapy safer than not? Can it do what it says it can do? That's really quite key. So at this point, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you for these few slides, and then we'll move to the end of the discussion.
Yeah, so lupus trials are, it's everywhere. It's a global disease, right? So it's not like a pocket or related to demographic. We can find some demographic or some pocket in certain area of the world, but overall, all clinical trials are run internationally. Here in the United States, it's run CAR-T therapies. There are multiple studies here in the United States, study in Europe, study in as well in Asia. So it's a global disease. It's been run globally, and that's what we're trying to understand. And that's actually what regulators want to see. They want to see data not only coming from one region and one demographic group. They want to see the data coming from multiple demographics and multiple regions. Next slide. All right. So as we say, imagine like we have 87 trials being conducted in the United States. So there is excitement in the community. There is excitement everywhere because lupus is one of those diseases. It's so hard to find a newer therapy. That's why we're excited about the CAR-T. Interventional trying, meaning that the patients come and having a treatment. So if you look like here, we have a 21 trial being conducted in LA area, so in different medical centers. So if you're not happy with your treatment, if you want something better, you always can reach out and can having a clinical trial and can go and enroll.
Absolutely.
All right. So first of all, if you feel your symptoms are not well controlled, always have the conversation with your treating physician. Your treating physician is the one who qualified to recommend what is the best for you. He knows what is the next. He knows why your symptoms is not controlled. Maybe he should add something to the regimen, but always have the conversation first. Second, do your research. Never go to trial without doing your research. Do the research. See if that drug and that length of the trial is suitable for your lifestyle. Because there's some clinical trial are very long, there's some clinical trial are shorter in period. Usually lupus trial is like a year commitment. So it's not like I'm gonna go receive a drug, I'm coming back home. So really you have to be committed to the study. To first of all, for your own safety and efficacy. If you want to see results, you have to be committed. Those clinical trials, they will follow you day-to-day basis. You're gonna have labs, you're gonna have going to the medical center, you're gonna have a lot of stuff. You even have assessment and home questionnaire you have to fill. So that is very important. Also, look and seek the advice from those patient advocacy group. Those groups are for you. They feel you. They feel the lupus is not an easy disease, and they can give you also their opinion and resources when you can go and find those trials. If you're not in one of those groups, please go and join because science is developing so rapidly. Even us, we cannot keep it up. So always you should be up to date with what's coming to the market, not be satisfied with the treatment. It's been long-term been prescribed for you. Just try the new medication if that's suitable with what your goal.
So
All right.
Yeah, and I'll wrap up some summaries and conclusions here for us, and we'll move to the next point of the discussion. So there are significant advances, and Michael has talked about where the data has been, where we may be going next, and how to be involved in that. And we are inspired by the fact that you, as patients, enroll in these studies, because without that commitment, without that data, we're not able to quicken the pace to understanding what's a better way to treat patients with lupus. We know that this is a global challenge. This is something that we are going to need additional opportunities in the US and Europe due to disease incidence. And if there are elements such as environmental factors that are driving these things, climate change and other aspects may be something that we really have to take a look at in regards to how to best treat our patients. And then getting you involved with sources of information and us being able to come and share with you what we're learning and understanding in this space is really important. Like Michael said, make sure you do as much of that research as you can. And if you don't understand it or it doesn't make sense, reach out to others that are there, such as Michael and myself, or focus groups or support groups, so that can give you some good guidance or some understanding of what that may be to participate in that next trial. So we very much are compassionate and compelled to move this forward, and we think that this is a really important research line for us as we go. So we'll wrap it up here. We'll certainly turn it back over to Lupus LA for Susan and Brianna, who have been such kind hosts to allow us to come into this. And again, I'm Chris with Dr. Michael Saddekni. We really are honored to have this opportunity. Please reach out as you see fit. Susan and Brianna, we'll turn it back to you at this point.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. We do have some quick questions, if you have just a quick moment.
Yes, ma'am.
We have an individual asking how to sign up for a CAR T trial. And I saw that clinicaltrials.gov link was included on your slide.
Yes,
do you have any other recommendations other than asking your direct physician?
Right. So first and foremost, your primary care provider or physician or specialist should be knowing about those things. If they don't, we can find or help you find other ways to get that information. Clinicaltrials.gov on the internet is run by the government, and it is something that allows you to understand what trials are open and enrolling for lupus, as well as those that are focused into CAR T, and we shared a little bit of that data. Also, Michael touched on the support groups and the advocacy groups. They are eminently aware of treatment options and new modalities to bring to patients in regards to lupus. So those are three areas to begin with. There are others, of course, but I would say your fastest understanding of that is just simply to go to clinicaltrials.gov, which is largely designed for patients in mind, to be able to enter their disease, enter the type of therapy they're interested in, and then select the region that they would like to find out where those trials are being run. So yes, ma'am, it's a great question. And the reason it is so great in many different ways is it allows the patient to be empowered to find that information without having to go to someone who's an expert or a specialist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to add, this is a great question. Usually CAR T right now running in the United States is like a specific academic centers because of the complexity of the trial.
Sure.
So in a geographic area where the patient is, he can look around where it's let's say the big medical center, talk to their physician again, and we are here to help. This is my contact information and Chris as well. So please, if you're having a problem to find a CAR T, if you feel like all those resources is not enough, we're here to help.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. The other question is very specific and symptom related, but somebody asked, how much energy do patients usually have during CAR T therapy? Do you typically feel sick during treatment?
So I will take that question. So
Yeah,
basically, CAR T therapies is stages. So the first stage, when you start to go for the CAR T treatment, What usually the patient will experience, we called it lymphodepletion. I know that's a very big words, but basically we're trying to give a very strong immunotherapy for the patients to lower the immune system. After that, we give an infusion. Usually the patient will be followed up in the hospital for a couple of days because of the risk of having hypersensitivity reaction. And usually the staff who administer CAR-T, they will have the experience how to manage those type of reaction. After that, we can see gradually the improvement of the fatigue, and the fatigue correlate with the disease activity. So fatigue here, we have to figure it out. Is it related to lupus activity or it's related to the side effect of the treatment? And that actually case by case and determined by the treating physician.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Michael
Thank you
framed
so
that perfectly. Yeah.
It's very helpful. Thank you so much for your time today. It was so helpful to look at the overview of where treatment approaches currently stand, and then very exciting to learn about how CAR-T therapy is progressing and what might be possible for lupus patients in the future. So if you're listening and you want to learn more about what you saw today, just tap the link in the comments or email us at info@lupusla.org, and we'll be happy to share more. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us.
Great.
Thank you for
Thank you so much.
inviting
It
us.
was a pleasure.
Have a great day.